Okay, so good morning. For today's discussion, we will have topic 6, all about undertaking an audit of financial statements. So it's focusing only on just like a summary, okay, of what we discussed from uh, topics 1 to 5. And at the same time, I'll include key things that you need to remember, okay, particularly on auditing, okay, financial statements. Okay, so relevant standards that we will, or you should be knowledgeable. We have ISBA Code of Ethics or CPA PNG's Code of Ethics. That's almost the same. SQC, all about quality. Uh, Other major ISAs here will be ISA 200, 220, 315. Others are supporting. 330 also. Another major ISA, that is ISA 500. That's important. Uh, and then ISA 580. 700 we discussed last time, 705, 706. Okay. Those are major ISAs and others will be supporting. Okay. First discussion is client continuance. Okay, so in client continuance, of course, we will assume that you already have topic 6. Okay. All right. So we will assume that we have that continued discussion or audit with our client. So but before we continue our audit, we have to at least have an assessment, okay, on few things. Okay, and even if you are accepting new client, you will also still do the same. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is consider your client's integrity. Okay, that's important, and you will be able to know this by, of course, doing certain research. Okay, so first, probably you might be looking into uh, published documents of your client or any let us say articles, okay, mentioning your client, any particular or pending court cases or decided cases, okay, wherein your client management has been seen doing issues or problem or accounting scandals. The next one is, of course, determining whether you, as an engagement audit team, will have the competency to perform your work. When you say competency, it means you as an auditor, you have that comprehensive, not individually, but as a team, you have those required skills in doing the audit. Okay, and you also have to consider if you or even your staff members have the background knowledge of the industry that you're auditing. Okay, so for example, if you're auditing a bank, so we will assume that all right, that's one of the reasons why I don't want to give the attendance early. Okay, so in determining whether you can do the work, you have to know whether you have the competency. So, for example, if you're auditing a bank, you may have to check whether one of your staff have that experience in banking industry. Okay, so at least giving you some basic knowledge of how banking industry works. Okay, and also of course those accounting knowledge is important. Now take note. Obviously, when you finish your degree, okay, you don't have that. We'll say, especially those who are not currently working, you don't have that vast knowledge in accounting. Okay, and it's not really expected that you will have the specialties. Okay, sometimes it's really funny where some employers or even audit firms will expect that you have the full knowledge of accounting. No, even if you attend internship, it should not be construed that you have all the knowledge. Okay, because it's different when you do it in practice. Okay, so but as you go along and learn, you will have that skills. Okay, or those skills that you are required. Okay, the next one is will your team, okay, can comply with ethical requirements. What ethical requirements? Independence, free from conflict of interest. Okay, and you will use the fundamental principles of professional ethics as a checklist. Okay, and determine whether there are threats to independence. Okay, self-interest, self-review, familiarity, advocacy, and then intimidation. Threat that might be influencing your team or you, even you as an audit partner, to be influenced or to decide otherwise. Okay, in a situation. So that is important. Sorry, this one is ISQC. ISQC 1. They talk about quality controls on firms. Okay? And when you entered into a contract or an engagement, you have to, before you enter into an engagement, you must agree on the terms. Okay? So, you will see it in ISA 210, agreeing on terms, which will, of course, clarify your responsibility as an auditor and responsibilities of the management. And what will be the scope, the timing, right? And the management should confirm their consent on you obtaining evidences, okay? Those required evidences. Okay, so ISA 220 is just a supporting standard for ISQC 1. So ISQC 1 is the general standard. ISA 220 will be supporting that standard. Okay, clear? I'm not really a big fan of that. Okay, anyway, so auditor will consider reputation of your client when you're assessing the client integrity. Reputation, I said a while ago, you can always have this by doing research, obtaining articles, news articles, any court decisions or cases, pending cases. You can also do certain background investigation about corporate governance, like the board of directors, members of the board, and then senior management. Okay, why you're doing that? Because you're trying to establish whether the client has that integrity. Okay, so if they have members of the board which have questionable reputations, then you might think in a bit, okay, so if there is a question on that, will that have an effect on client's integrity? Okay, so clear? What else? What is the reason why they're switching audit firms? So that's a good question. Okay, so now you are engaged with this client. The next question that you can ask is why they are hiring us and terminating the previous engagement. Okay. Am I clear on what I'm trying to say? Okay, so now you will have that question. Why? Normally, audit firms, if they have good relationship with the client, they will have that continued relationship. Okay? So the question is why they're changing audit firms? What are the issues? And you will be allowed to, before you enter into to engagement, you're allowed to discuss with the former audit firms, which means you will have that chance to ask questions. Okay, why? What's the main issues you had in the previous audit, and why is it your initiation to end the engagement or the client's initiation to end the engagement, and what's the reason why? Okay, primarily there are two major things that might be the reason. Okay, one is fee. Maybe the former audit firms are charging too much, and they are trying. The client is trying to save costs. But that might question also the quality of the work. So if they're trying to reduce the fee, will that reflect on the quality of audit? And that's the reason why they're hiring you as the new auditor. Okay. Another reason will be there are particular disagreement with audit firms and client. Okay, and maybe the audit firm issued modified opinion. So it's a human nature wherein we don't want others to criticize us, right? Do you want to be criticized? If you want, I'll criticize you every day. Not really, okay? So it's a human factor or characteristics that we don't want to be criticized. So if you as an audit firm or the former audit firm issued that modified opinion, it's almost like a criticism, right? So maybe that's the reason why they changed audit firms. And Now you will ask, why you qualified or modified the report? Got it? Then the audit firm, the former audit firm will be saying, the reason is because we have disagreement, or the client is preventing us on doing our work, obtaining sufficient evidences and these things. Okay. Another reason or another way to assess client integrity is to determine how they are managing risk. Okay, are they much aggressive on taking the business and exposing themselves, okay, on possible risk? Okay, because that will also look into the client's control environment. If they're too aggressive, possibilities are they are not following certain controls. So remember, controls are designed for the company to obtain or to achieve their objectives or goals. So if they don't want to follow, the or they have a much aggressive way in operation, that might question whether they're following proper protocols. Okay, and that will affect the integrity. Okay, clear? Right. Another way will be attitude in implementation and maintenance of controls, similar to what I mentioned a while ago. Appropriateness of clients' interpretation of accounting rules. Are they using accounting rules to perform what we call earnings management? Earnings management is where they're using the standards, accounting standards, to maximize or increase their profit. Got it? So the same standard issued by IFRS, they're using to ensure that they have high profits. Okay, so that is what we call earnings management, and you, as an auditor, will be one of the contributors there. If you are just keep on allowing them to abuse accounting standards, then you're part of that scheme, earnings management. Okay, because you are the one who knows what is the right or appropriate accounting standards that they need to follow. Okay, and if the management has this discretion in choosing accounting standards in a way that it will only favor them and violating the basic convention of accounting standards, then you're not commenting on that, you're not qualifying the report, you'll be part of it. Okay. In some negligence cases, you will be sued also. Okay. I think in your company law, you're discussing about vicarious liability or secondary liability. You are part of the one to be sued. Okay. Are you discussing that in company law? Vicarious liability? You forgot already. That's last. Okay, anyway. You forgot that. Vicarious liability, secondary liability. One is primarily liable in negligence. You will be there also as an auditor if you fail to do your work. Okay? There's another word for that, contributory negligence, if you can recall your discussion. What else? So willingness to allow you to have access to information. If they're limiting you, that also questions integrity. I have my former professor who asked me, okay, if someone, hey, both of you are only in the same room, okay, you uh you have seen, let us say, 1,000 kina, okay, in front, and then I mean 1 minute you just maybe turn your head and look in another way, that 1,000 kina missing, and then there's another guy there, and then he's flipping his hands like this, his back, and then you're asking, where's the 1,000 kina? And then this guy is saying, I don't know. And then you're asking, can I see your hands? Why? Hands. I don't want to show you my hands. Who are you? Are you a policeman? Or what? Okay, so okay, in that situation, will you have that doubt on the integrity of the person?
Yes.
Yes, same thing. If you are not allowed or or have that restriction, okay, imposed by your client in obtaining evidences, that will question the integrity of your client. Clear? We are not saying this client has poor integrity. We are just saying we are doubtful of your integrity because you're not willing to show us the necessary information that we need. Okay, clear? Next. Most important of all, okay? If you don't want this discussion, then why you're doing audit? Client's attitude to audit fees. Now, remember, you as an audit firm, particularly medium size or the second level audit firms, we call it national audit firms, and then international ones, the big four, most likely they already calculated how much they will charge the client. And because it's based on the work that they're supposed to do, right? Okay. So how does it work is this. In your plan, you will say, let us say, sending confirmation letter to customers. How many hours? What is the rate? You multiply it, that's the charge for that. Every audit work you will have, and then you will multiply by rate, and that's the charge, okay, or the total cost. Then, based on cost, you will do your markup calculation, right? You studied this in your favorite cost accounting and advanced cost accounting, correct? You add cost, right? So that's basic business, okay? So add markup. Now, if your client is questioning too much about your audit fees, and you know in your work that's the norm, okay, which means that's how other audit firms are charging, questioning your charge in audit fees. Of course, you maybe think you can think of do the bargaining and negotiation, so you can lower it. But if you lower your fee, will that also affect your possible or planned work? Because if you reduce the fee, you might skip some planned work that you're supposed to do. Will that question the quality of your work? Yes. Okay. So you have to weigh, before you reduce the fee. You have to think, okay, will that also affect me as an auditor? And then why they are particularly on audit fees? Now, audit is they call it necessary evil. Why? Because it's additional cost. Audit is additional cost for the business because your work again is to enhance the confidence, okay, of the reader of the report that the report was reviewed. Got it? So technically speaking, if a client is doing well in reporting, they have a good system. Are we supposed to step in and then enhance that? They already established that they are having good system. Let us say for discussion purposes, okay? So if they already established that they have a good system, is audit necessary? Yes, no. I mean, what I'm saying, hypothetically, if a business already established that they have a good system, they're reporting, they're complying, okay, with all necessary requirements, and then they're doing their best, is audit necessary? In that situation, no. You got it, huh? But we know because of the self-interest, these things, it may not be possible. That's the reason why audit is coming. You got it, huh? Okay. Now, audit is necessary even because of that situation. Okay? And these guys will say, we're doing our best. So, and our system are working well. We have already been proven that. So why you're charging too much? Okay? We can also see it in that way. Maybe we have to reduce some of our work because their system is right or doing well. Okay? Remember in audit risk assessment, you're assessing the operation. Okay? If you establish that they have a strong control, why do you need to perform a lot of audit procedures? You have to reduce that. Clear? So it will take a good negotiation skills in establishing fee. But questioning too much about your fee is a bit of a doubt with client integrity. Okay? Where to obtain information about integrity of your client? Communication with previous auditor, as I mentioned a while ago. Communication with client personnel. You must have a discussion with your client personnel. Certain discussion, major discussions, okay, about the operation. Third party like clients and bankers. Sorry, bankers and lawyers. Okay, so which means you will be given authority or consent by your client to communicate directly with their bankers or banks and lawyers. And the lawyers and banks will provide necessary information. Okay? All right. If you can get information from key competitors, that's also fine. Normally, it will not happen, but try your best. Okay. Maybe publish annual report. You can refer to that. Okay. Review of press articles about the client. Now, there's a question on this and current, like in our current generation. Okay. The question is social media posts, okay, affecting the integrity of the client? Because, okay, it says press articles about the client. Now, can we consider those posts in social media to be part of our assessment of client integrity? Yes, no. My answer is it depends on the situation because you will be the judge, okay, on the situation. You will know, like nowadays. Then I have seen one, just again, another video, okay, that I almost pulled that it's it's right. Okay? It's a correct video. Really clear, like you cannot now identify which is a true video or generative AI video. I was watching it. I was really wait. Then I was trying to figure out, is this guy saying the right thing? Oh? Because I was trying to recall what I have what I have taught already. I have learned, and I you already have that information, and then someone's telling it in a different way, and then I was trying to scroll on the comments, and then they're saying it's generative AI thing. Then I tried to search the true information, okay, which means whatever is saying, I cross check with the internet and then some articles. Then I discovered that it's not true. Now, in that situation, we will or shall we accept any social media post as part of our assessment of client integrity? So what I've said is it depends. Okay, sometimes people also tell the truth in social media. So in your situation, you have to really dig in before you accept information. Clear? Anyway, you will be the one to do audit in the future. So just telling you. Huh? Next, ethical consideration. As I mentioned, ethical consideration, you need to comply with Code of Ethics. We have 5 fundamental principles: integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. Okay, so you need to comply with this. And I think we discussed this thoroughly before. Okay, just a reminder. Threats, we have self-interest, self-review, advocacy, familiarity, and intimidation threat. Okay, so you have to use this as like a checklist, okay, on determining whether you and your audit firm or your client, sorry, audit engagement team will be able to comply with ethical requirements. Okay, so try to just figure out what we are trying to say here. Okay, I'll give you time. Okay, let's check. The CEO of a client threatens to change auditors unless issue an unqualified opinion. The threats here will be not self-interest. The threat is coming from your client. They are the one telling, okay, that okay, you don't issue an unqualified opinion, we will terminate the engagement. So this one is intimidation threat, not self-interest. Okay, there's a difference between this. This is more of intimidation. Okay. Next, management is pressuring our firms to reduce the audit hours in order to reduce our fees. It's it's again pressure is coming from management, so that will be intimidation threat. But we can also say self-interest threat. Okay. But of course, in practice, when you're doing your audit, uh, it's not really that highly technical that you need to specify only one, okay, threat. Okay, so when you're trying to assess ethical issues here, you can identify it one or two, okay, or maybe combination of five, okay, three, five, okay. So in second line, that can be classified as intimidation, also self-interest, okay. So why am I giving you this exercise? Again, when you are doing client acceptance process or client continuance, you have to provide the report. Okay, part of your quality control, saying, okay, we comply with the ethical requirements. Okay, our team is free from conflict of interest and any threats to independence. Okay, and also you have to mention why you are removing a particular staff on the engagement, which means that you're excluding that individual. Okay, then you have to identify why. You will say, okay, this individual, our audit manager here cannot be part of the audit engagement team, our team here, because the audit manager has a personal relationship with the CEO of the company, and that will create self-interest, okay, threat, or will have self-interest threat. So you have to clearly state why you are removing one of the staff in your audit engagement team. You're not removing on the audit firm, only on the engagement team. Clear? Because you cannot just say, hey, don't join us. Please. We don't like you. Go there. No, you have to say, okay, why you're removing him in the team. Okay, technicalities, or else he can sue you actually. So we say, why are you removing me? You don't have any justification. I'll sue you with the civil case. Clear? So you must be clear, okay, on doing this. Next. Our audit firm is promoting new issue of shares from a client company. That is advocacy. So you will also write in your client, if the client is saying we wish to have an engagement with you, by the audit firm, then you, if you are rejecting that offer, you need to specify why you're rejecting it. Clear? Am I clear on that? Then someone, audit firm, we want you to audit us. And then you're saying, we don't like you, so sorry. Sorry, we don't like. It's not like that. It's not really professional. You must provide reason why you're rejecting. But you do it in much modest way. You will say, you cannot put in the letters, we hate your senior manager says so. We don't like. Communication must be clear. And that's the reason why you need to identify the threats, possible threats. Clear? It's not only because we're doing academic things here. No. That these are important technical issues on audit. Okay? Next. Each member of our audit team receive a cruise holiday as a gift from client. If you are the member of the audit team, no threats. Okay. No, it will not influence our decision. It's a free vacation. Don't mind us, boss. Our integrity is still there. No conflict of interest. Do you think even other individuals say, yes, no conflict of interest? If you're looking at it in the third party perspective, if each member of the audit team received this, what do you think about the audit team? If one of you given me a free holiday in Europe, and then I gave you HD, that individual who gave me a free holiday on Europe, Mediterranean cruise, we'll go around there. I really like it. It's fun. Bucket list. Hopefully I will be able to do it. But the question is now, I gave HD to that person who gave me that free vacation. Will you not question my integrity why I'm giving him HD, even though that individual is doing well in the class? Will you question me now? Hey, Sam, you give HD to him. For me, P only. Shall I give you also Caribbean cruise? Am I clear? So, in this situation, will you question the integrity? Or any conflict of interest? Yes. You got it? So, you must be clear. Why? And you need to cite the provision in professional ethics code. Okay? Why you are saying, team members, sorry, now all of you will be removed from this engagement. You will be replaced by a new set of staff and team. Okay? Clear? It's not like, why? Why you receive this vacation? We also want to receive it. So please move away from the engagement. We will replace you so that we can also have that privilege. It's not like that. Specify, huh? Clear, future auditors? Okay. What else do we have? We not necessary to complete all this. Okay, let us pick. Pick one. Our audit must cover an inventory valuation system, which was implemented by our firm after last year's audit. Will there be a chance for you to review your own work? Because you're the one who actually you created and helped implementing the inventory system. Now you will audit the client. Will there be a chance for you to audit that same system that you designed and implement? Take note, you're the audit firm. You're asked by one company, hey, audit firm, can you help us doing implementing that inventory valuation system that you also created for us? Then you did it. Okay, you help them implement, review on these things. Okay. Now the same company you will audit. Will you be having that opportunity to review your own work? You're the one who implemented this, huh? Will you be reviewing the one that you implemented? Yes, no. Yes? No, yes. Okay. You submitted your assignment. And then I told you, okay, I'm tired. You're around 80 here, becoming 90 in this class. I'm already tired. Please review your own assignment and mark it. What will you do in your assignment? You will make it 50% only, huh? 95%, at least there's okay. What they said, good cheaters commit a mistake. Okay? Why? Because if you're not good cheater, you will make all your work 100%. But if you are a good cheater, at least maybe have 1-2 errors. Okay, so that it's not obvious that you cheat. Okay? Now you're doubting. I got 10. Wait, did it? In the quiz. Oh. Good cheater, put an allowance. Okay. Now you're wondering, oh my God, I made 10 in my quiz. I'm not doubting you. Okay? Maybe you have done well. I will not question your integrity. You have to question yourself. Okay. I will not do that. I will not ask, hey, why you got 10? No, it's not my role. I will not do that to you. You yourself, you will be able to assess yourself, okay, if you have done it right or wrong. Okay. So if you had the chance to review your own work, is there anybody, like for example, in that case, I allow you to mark your own paper. And then you got HD. Okay, you mark your own paper and you said, Mr. I will help you to mark my friend's paper. All HDs. Will that be questionable?
Yes.
Even if you performed well, it will still be questionable. Okay? Clear? Because that is what we call self-review threat. Okay? Clear? Okay, we'll skip. Okay, what else do we have? Take note of this. This is important in threats. Threats to fundamental principles of professional ethics will occur if the prospective client is dishonest, involved in illegal activities, or aggressive in implementation of accounting rules. An audit firm should not accept an entity as a new client if it is concerned about any of these threats. It says any, which means one with material effect on your work, automatically you reject. Okay, clear, huh? not 2, not 3. You'll say, only 1 eh. There are 5, so it's 20%. No, if only 1, don't accept. Clear? But take note, I'm talking about material effect. Material effect. Okay. Now, for example, okay, you will be auditing BSP. BSP is a listed company. Take note, if you own 0.00001% of shares or ownership in BSP, is that significant enough to affect your integrity? Even if BSP declare dividends, you will only receive 10K na. Is 10K na dividend on your ownership in BSP because you purchase shares in PNGX significant enough to affect your decision making? 10K na? 10K na dividend? No. 100K na dividend? Maybe now, but in the future, no. No, it's okay. It's student. Okay, so. But let us say you are receiving annually 100,000 kina from BSP. Will that affect your integrity?
Yes.
Or questionable, or there will be questionable integrity? Yes. Got it? So what I'm saying is depending on materiality. Okay? So if that material threat is there, don't accept. Right? The engagement. Potential threat to compliance with fundamental principles should be considered from time to time, which means that's the reason why you're doing every year assessment of integrity, okay, or sorry, compliance with ethical requirements. Okay, so as one of your roles is to identify material risks, focusing on fraud risk, and we will have this expanded the discussion next week. Okay. Now in fraud risk, we have what we call fraud risk triangle. This is what we call fraud risk triangle. Okay, incentives or pressure, opportunities, attitude and rationalization. I will not discuss so much on this because we will discuss further on next week's discussion. But this is what we call fraud risk triangle. Okay. Now in completing audit report, and we discussed this last time, you need to perform this work, reviewing subsequent events, considering the appropriateness of going concern assumption, confirming litigation and claims from client's solicitor or the lawyers, obtaining written representation from management, performing year-end final analytical procedures, evaluating audit findings, and communicating with the entity. Okay? And communicating this to the entity. All right. So that's the end of the first part of the discussion. I will discuss this is really quite important in your audit. Hey. Sorry. All right. It's not working like that. Okay. So remember, your work will always focus on audit assertion. Okay. Audit assertion, as we had discussed before, those are representations reflecting in the financial statements and also notes, which means these are the things that client wish to communicate to third party. Clear, huh? Okay. So in the financial statement, if they stated that they have cash at bank, 1 million kina. Okay, that is the one. That is one of the things that they want to tell to the third party that they have 1 million kina as at the particular date. Clear? So that is what we call assertion. If they say that we entered into a contract, okay, and then put it in the notes. So which means that is the thing or one of the things that they wish to communicate to third party. And you as an auditor, what will be your role? That's a good question. Your role is to obtain an assurance that those assertions were properly supported. Okay, if they said that they have existing land, you as an auditor will do or design your audit procedure to test the existence of the land. Clear? If they said, okay, this is the value of our stocks, you as an auditor is to obtain an assurance that the valuation of the stocks has been done properly. So you will cross-check with maybe in PNGX, check how much the price as at the particular date, and then multiply number of shares. Then you will have the value of the investment of your client. Clear? Clear on assertion? Knowing assertion is important in audit. Okay? Whether you are doing external, internal, or quality audit. Because remember, assertion is the one they're trying to show to others or provide to others. And you as an auditor is tasked to enhance the credibility of those assertions. How to enhance? Verifying whether those are true. Clear? Future auditors? Okay. Audit is not really that difficult. Okay. Doing is of course difficult. Obtaining evidences and these things. But if you think about it, it's a simple process. Why simple process? When you are in engagement, your main aim is to test assertion. Clear? And you design procedures to test those assertions. When you test this using procedures, you will produce audit evidence. And an audit evidence will be your basis on your opinion. Simple process. Okay, client, these are the things that you're trying to show to third party. We will design our audit procedure to test those assertions. Using procedure, we will be able to create evidence. And our opinion will be based on evidence. Simple process. Doing it, of course, complicated because you need to travel, okay, and obtain evidences. Okay. All right. So, what are the types of assertion? We have three major classifications of assertions. One is assertions about classes of transactions and events, which will be pertaining to income statement accounts, like sales, cost of sales, expenses, okay, income. The second classification is assertion about account balances, assets, liabilities, equity. Clear? The third classification will be on presentation and disclosure, more of like the notes to financial statements. Clear? Am I clear on the assertion? Of course, we'll go into the details. Okay, and you can see this in ISA 200. Okay, so either ISA 200, 210, or 220. Only these three. Okay. Now let's look into the classification of assertion based on class of transactions, which will be included in income statement. Okay. Right. I want to establish this because this is important. And this will be a huge part of your work. Okay. It's not only the assessment. This will be a huge part of your work as an auditor. Okay. If you're eyeing to be an audit practitioner in the future, this is really important. Okay. It's similar or same thing with debit and credit in accounting. Debit and credit, you're still using it, right? Or you already forgot debit and credit? What's that? Did we study that in principles of accounting? Now, it's the same thing. In audit, assertion is really crucial on your work. Okay, let's slide. First assertion here, occurrence. Transactions and events that have been recorded, have occurred, and pertain to the entity. So let's test one assertion, and at least you will have appreciation of this. I'm establishing that one because without this, it's really quite difficult to explain audit. Okay, sales. Okay, so using occurrence as the assertion. Okay, so your objective is in sales. There are a number of assertions that can be tested or you need to test. One of those is occurrence. Can we say also accuracy? Invoices. Okay. Can we also say cut-off? Yes, because the sales that you are supposed to record will be, let us say, if you're auditing an annual report, all the sales which happens from 1st January to 31st December should be included, right? Clear? Not the next year. Because that's for the next period. Okay, clear? That's why cut off is important, okay, pertaining to balance date. Clear? Clear on this? Okay. Can we also say completeness? It's not here, so it's there. What completeness says? All transaction and events that should have been recorded have been recorded. Is it important for the company to ensure that all sales had been recorded? Yes? So, your client is saying sales, it happened, it's recorded properly, correct amount, it is recorded in the correct period, and all those sales had been recorded. Those are the assertions. These are the things that, of course, your client will not say obviously. They will say, guys, in our sales, look at the notes. We say all happened, occurrence. They will not say it explicitly. It means it's impliedly. So as an auditor, you can identify these assertions. Now let's test one. Occurrence. So in occurrence, what occurrence saying? So it says here. Let's put it in sales perspective. All sales recorded in the sales ledger occurred and pertaining to entity. So this is now your what we call objectives. Sorry, assertion. So your objective will be based here. So what will be your objective? Okay, so this is the obvious assertion that the client is saying. Okay, all the sales that we recorded in the sales ledger happened or occurred and pertaining to the client. So what will be your audit objective? The normal word will start at to obtain an assurance that, okay, what is the one that you want to obtain an assurance for? Complete the sentence, okay? English class, okay, English class. Okay, tell me, come on. To obtain, this is your audit objective, So audit objective, okay, in sales, Okay. So to obtain an assurance that we're focusing on occurrence, that all sales recorded in sales ledger occurred. Can I say like that? Okay, so you complete already. Yes. Audit workshop. Because this usually will be taught to you in audit firms. Okay, because you need to design your audit objective. Okay, so you said that you obtain an assurance that all sales recorded occurred. Okay, so audit objective, Audit procedure. What will be the procedure that you will perform to check whether this sale happened? You don't have physical evidence because the goods, normally if they sold it, it's gone, right? So you cannot perform checking of the goods existing. No. So what is the best audit procedure? Okay, you can go through the receipts and invoices, right? So your audit procedure can be said like audit procedure, inspecting sales, invoices, and receipts. Okay, you can actually make it longer. So let's say inspecting sales, invoices, and receipts, cross-checking with delivery confirmation, like this, so that you know that, and also billings and counter-checking it with billings. Why you need to check it with billings? Because if there is a sales invoice, most likely they billed it. Am I correct? And then if the sales happen, you can say that there's an inventory outflow, which means the inventory has been delivered. Am I correct on saying that? So you have to design your audit procedure in that way. After you perform audit procedure, now you have evidence. What is your evidence? Your analysis of invoices. Okay, so which means you can do a spreadsheet. Invoice number 1, 3, 5, 7, like this. And then you can create a worksheet like that. Okay. So audit evidence. Then you concluded based on evidences that based on samples, a sampling technique, right? Based on samples that you obtained, all evidences saying that the sales occurred. Now you will create your conclusion. Okay, so based on evidence, you say we obtain, let us say 100 invoices, samples invoices, and based on that, we cross-check with delivery receipt and billings. All had confirmed that the sale occurred. Then your conclusion, all the sales record based on our testing procedure, all sales occurred. Clear? You will not do this only on sales. Of course, you have to do it in other accounts. So, am I clear on how useful assertion will be in establishing this? Okay. So, what are we still have here? Part of classification presentation. Okay. I'm actually okay with that because you already knew the importance. That's the important thing. Whatever I will discuss, if you don't appreciate the importance of assertion, it's useless. So if you knew the importance of assertion, then I'm okay with that. Those things only addition you see. Let's see on account balances or balance sheets. Existence, rights and obligations, completeness, valuation and allocation, presentation. Existence, is it important in asset? Except for intangible asset, all of the assets will, sorry, not only intangible but also investment, all the assets will be what? Having physical substance. The chair that we're using, the table that we have here, the projector here, all, okay, will have physical substance. Am I correct? Even cash. Okay? Of course, cash electronically, that's a different case. But cash on hand, yes? Okay, yes, will have physical substance. Rights and obligation, is it important? Okay, you're allowed to use certain property because you have the right to use the property, right? Am I correct on saying that? Do you have the right to use this chair? Actually, it's not right. It's privilege, I think. Okay, anyway, that's technicalities. But when you say right, it means that the company or your client has the privilege of using it. Correct? Or also we can say, if you say right, the client or your client has the obligation or right to collect money from the customer. Clear? Am I clear? Same thing. If they obtain a loan, are they obliged or required to pay? So now, how to test the obligation of the client to pay the loan? Let's do that. Okay. Rights and obligation. The liabilities. Let's say you're focusing on loans. The loans recorded here, the loans recorded in the ledger is an actual loan obtained by the client. Something like that. That's your audit. That's the assertion. So your audit objective is to obtain an assurance that the loans recorded by the client is pertaining to the client. Why I'm saying that? Because sometimes in real world, they may be obtaining a loan, but they are not the one who's receiving the money. Got it? Huh? They obtain a loan in behalf of other individual. So your audit objective is to obtain an assurance whatever loan that they recorded pertains to the client. How to check that? Loan agreement? Can we obtain a copy of the loan agreement? Yes, we cross-check. Is the loan really pertaining to the client? So it's easy to determine that, right? You can see the name of your client. Say ABC Limited. Another way is to send confirmation letter to the bank who provided the loan to check whether that is an actual loan. Got it? Huh? Because it's easy to produce a paper. Nowadays, you just do chat GPT, okay, please spare me a document on this, generate, right? Then you change the name. Cross-checking to the bank will be different because that is an independent entity. When I say independent, it's not part of the operation. Although they are having that client relationship, but it doesn't mean that bank will what? Lie just to save the client. If they lie, it will destroy their reputation and it will affect their operation. So most likely bank will not lie. Clear? Unless, take note, unless your client is the only client of that bank. So then they might lie, okay? Which means if I don't, the bank will in this situation, the bank will be in this situation where if I say bad things about this client, this is the only client that we have. If we don't help them, they might withdraw the money and then we don't have client anymore. Clear? But banks, we know normally will have lots of clients, so most likely the bank will not lie. Okay? Assertion on presentation and disclosure on notes, we have occurrence, completeness, accuracy and valuation, classification and understandability. Now, my main aim is for you to appreciate the importance of assertion in creating audit objectives. And from objectives, you can design the audit procedure. And from procedure, you will be able to produce evidence. Clear? Okay. So I'm talking about audit procedure a while ago. Okay, these are the discussion on audit procedure. So remember, in audit procedure, you have two major classification of audit procedures. One will be test of controls, and the other one is substantive procedures. Okay, clear, huh? Test of controls, what you're doing there is testing the process, protocols, policies, how they're doing it. That's why you're performing observation, inquiries, and reperformance. Okay. Substantive procedure, on the other hand, there will be two classification. One is test of details, which is auditor's favorite. Later I'll explain to you. And substantive analytical procedure. Okay, so in test of details, what you're doing there is you are directly testing the assertion. For example, a while ago, we're talking about sales, and you said you will inspect what? Sales invoice. Why you want to inspect sales invoice? Just to have fun, so that you can charge the client. No. Okay, so you're testing invoice, sales invoice for you to determine what? What are the information included in sales invoice? Nothing. It's just blank A4 paper. Client name, sorry, customer name. What else? Amount due. Can we also see number of quantity they sold? Okay. Can we also say unit price? Okay. Can we also say discount if there is like terms? Yes. How many days that they are allowed to pay so that it will not be classified as past due? Yes. Okay. GST? Yes. Can you also see the address of the client's customer? Okay. So these are the information that we need or we needed in or we will be able to obtain in looking into sales invoice. Clear? That is what we call test of details because you are looking into the details, the specific information included in the invoice. Clear? It's not only like observation wherein you get the sales invoice and then you just look at the sales invoice and then you say, it looks nice, but it's okay, accept as evidence. No, test of details, you look into every details of that. Okay. Now, talking about sales invoice. So I mentioned about unit price a while ago. So in unit price, in every organization, they have what we call master price list. That master price list is a controlled document wherein only those with higher level authority can change it. Clear, huh? Because they already set the price. And only few individuals can change it with authority, huh? Okay. I went to shop, okay, in Vision City, and then I was trying to buy a pair of shoes, okay. Then it was in promo, okay? So 50% off. When will you have that? Okay, so and then I'm trying, and then I was actually being attracted to buy it because it's a promotion. Huh? Then I approached the salesperson and then I said, I want to buy this because it's in promo. Eh. And then she, okay, Mister, can I size and these things, the preliminaries. Okay, so she got the size and then the color that I want, and then she went to the cashier. Then they are arguing. Both of them are arguing. Not arguing really, but like discussing. And then, as an individual who's really observing things, I knew that it's already a problem. Okay, so what did they approach? Any problem? Mister, this one is not in promo anymore. Okay. So, okay, I said, then that's fine. I will not buy it. But why is it not in promo? We checked the master price list. This is the new price because it's out of the promo anymore. It's not covered by the promo. So, okay, so no change, sir. Can I change it? Mister, we cannot really change it because it's approved by boss. Okay, sort of things. So in that way, that is actually a good control because both of them, the salesperson wants to sell it because the commission is based on sales. You got it, huh? And the cashier, of course, she wants to do her work. Without this sales, of course, she will not be paid. Obviously, okay? But they cannot what? Change the price. Is it a good control? If the salesperson can change that price and the salesperson's compensation will be based on commission, what the salesperson will do is what? They'll sell all items at discount so that that this person can obtain commission. Is it a good control? You cannot change the price easily. Yes, yes. So test of controls. You got it, huh? You can test that when you are testing a retail shop. You just test. Can you manually change the price? Okay. If they cannot, then which means the control is strong because they cannot change it by themselves. They need some authority to change that. Okay, clear? Is you try it sometimes. Okay? Maybe one of your friends working in shops and then you ask, hey, do you have the authority to change that? Just want to know, okay? For audit purposes, audit class purposes. Okay? Clear on at least an example, huh? What are the common audit procedures? We have inquiry, observation, inspection, confirmation, recalculation, reperformance, and analytical procedures. So these are examples. Huh? And I think you have discussed this in your auditing class, so I will not really deal so much. I'm just showing to you. Okay. Now do we have time? Okay, we still have time. Let's look into key accounts and how it works. Huh? Okay. So the first key account here is everyone's top of the list, okay, of the accounts that you wish to audit and you wish you have. Okay, it's what? By cash. Now look into the key assertions. So the existence, our question is, does the cash balance actually exist? Next, completeness. Is all cash owned by the entity included? Valuation and allocation, particularly on foreign currency. Okay? So cash balance recorded at the correct amount. Rights and obligation, does the entity have the legal right to the cash? Maybe they're just holding on to the cash and they don't really own it. Okay? Got it? Is it possible? That they're keeping cash that they don't really own? What? Yes, possible? Okay. But do they have the right to hold on to it? You have to find out. Okay? Maybe that's a deposit. Like in bank. Okay? Bank will reflect cash, right? In their financial statement. Do they really own the cash? Okay. That is what? Given by the customers. But do they have the right, okay, to hold on to that cash? Yes, because that's part of the deposit. Okay? Clear? Okay, so this is an example of cash. Okay, so let's try to check some audit procedures. So the flow of the discussion here is assertion, audit procedure, assertion, audit procedure. Okay, in testing existence, the best way is to do bank confirmation. If they're reporting they have cash at bank, the best way is to send a confirmation letter to the bank. Clear? The bank will directly respond to us, the auditor. Okay, if your client is saying as at 31st December, our cash at bank is 10 million kina. So you as an auditor, what you will do? You send confirmation letter to the bank, asking the bank in the letter, please confirm that as at this period, okay, this is the cash balance of ABC company. Clear? And then if the bank responded, we will now confirm whether the amount recorded is true or correct. Or maybe just fiction of mind. Okay, clear? That's why you're sending bank confirmation. Okay? So you're testing existence there, rights and obligation. Bank reconciliation. Okay? While you're doing this, you also have, you're testing completeness, existence, and accuracy. What is happening in bank reconciliation? Your client's bank cash ledger will record deposits that they made and check withdrawal that they also incurred during the period. The bank statement will show any transaction reflecting on their records. Then you will do reconciliation, right? So why we're doing that? Because we want to test whether those recorded as withdrawal here in or check withdrawal in cash ledger is reflected in bank statement. If not, then we will do reconciliation, or that will be a reconciling item, right? Then you will be able to reconcile the difference between bank statement and cash ledger. We're doing that because we are trying to determine whether the cash is accurately recorded, and also completeness. Why completeness? Because we're testing whether all those recorded disbursement had been accounted for. To do that, cash ledger, bank statement, compare. Is there a check missing? Okay, so sorry, because we don't have that practical auditing. In practical auditing, we have what we call there is a process we call it proof of cash. What is a proof of cash? It's an extended version of bank reconciliation. So normally in bank reconciliation, you're doing only monthly, right? That's what we have been taught. Pay monthly, do reconciliation. In proof of cash, you can extend that into 2-3 months. Okay. Why are you doing that? Okay, in January, let us say there's an outstanding check. Let's say outstanding check of 500,000 kina. Okay, clear? Then in February, let us say check number, let's put a number 02. Okay. Then in February, there's still outstanding check, okay, number 02, 500,000 kina. March, you also have, sorry, too much singing, okay. Check number 02, 500,000 kina. Now, as an auditor, will you be having that like doubt or curious where that 500,000 kina went? You can only do that if you are doing proof of cash, which means you have an extended version of bank reconciliation, and then you will realize this one, why is this still outstanding? So as an auditor, you will trace this outstanding check number 2, who is the payee, and why they are not encashing it. Maybe, okay, it's an actual cash which, let us say, a physical money taken from the company, and then they just reflected it as check. Got it, huh? and then that check is keep on be classified as outstanding check again and again and again. Clear? Will you be suspicious why this check is not encashed for maybe 6 months? Yes? Okay. Normally, 6 months will be okay. If an individual really didn't encash a check for 6 months, that's still fine. But on the 7th month, in normal banking practice, that will be called stale check. So what will happen? They'll automatically discard that check. Clear? So in the 7th month, that 500,000 should not exist. Clear? Next, so I'll go to accounts payable. So at least we cover more accounts. So in accounts payable, the key assertions here are existence, completeness, rights and obligation, presentation, and disclosure. Now, rights and obligation, why? The receivables, you must, or your client must have the right to collect money from customers. Am I correct? Correct. It's not legal right, huh? It can be constructive right, which means it's part of the normal trade wherein customer of the client will purchase and will pay later. They may be 30 days after. It's part of the normal trade. It's not legal, huh? Take note, it's not legal. When you say legal, then you have to issue notes receivable. Clear, huh? Accounts payable is part of the normal trading practice. So in that case, is the client having that right to collect money from the customer if they deliver the product? If BNBM delivered AC here in IBS University, is BNBM have that right to collect money from IBS? Yes. So it's a constructive right to collect. So in that case, BNBM will say we have the right to collect to our customer. Okay, it is our accounts receivable ledger. Okay, clear? So you will say in rights and obligation, all the receivables or debtors recorded, okay, are existing receivables of our customer in audit objectives. Your audit, in assertion, your audit objective will be to obtain an assurance that all the debtors included in the debtors ledger are customers of our client, and client has the right to collect. Now, what will be your procedure to test the rights and obligation? Okay, so the best way is to send confirmation letter. Okay, what is a confirmation letter? You as an auditor will send confirmation to customers. Okay, and customers can respond directly to you. Sorry, did I mention about two different confirmations before? Positive and negative? No, yes, okay. Positive confirmation is where you are requiring the recipient to respond back directly to you as an auditor. Requiring, even if they don't agree or agree on the content of the letter, doesn't matter. You are requiring them to respond back. Negative confirmation, on the other hand, is you will send confirmation letter to the customer or third party, but they will be required to respond only if they don't agree with the details of the confirmation letter. Clear, huh? So positive confirmation letter, send confirmation, required to respond. Negative confirmation letter, send confirmation letter, they will only respond if they don't agree with the details. Clear? Right. What else? Sales cutoff, that is also included. Okay, next, inventory. Okay, key assertion on inventory will be what? We have existence, completeness, valuation and allocation, price and obligation, and presentation and disclosure. Is existence an important assertion that you need to test in inventory? Yes, no, yes. We need to test the existence of the inventory, right? So when you design your audit procedure, you will base it on assertion. How to test the existence of the inventory? How to test? Asking someone, is there inventory inside there? Oh, it might work, but it's not what we call a reliable way of obtaining evidence. The best way is to see it personally, right? At least, okay? See it, or we call it physical inventory count observation. What you're doing in physical inventory count is you are not counting, you are observing how they are doing the stock take. And you will do test count. Okay, I think we discussed about test count before. Okay, so in that way, you are having that assurance to obtain an assurance that the inventory in the inventory ledger exists. So that is your audit objective now. Procedure: perform physical observation of stock take. Got it? And perform test count. Now in audit procedure, you have to state that. Okay, what you will do. Okay, or sometimes not audit procedure, they will use the word work done. If you already done it, of course. Okay. What else do we have? Okay, so we are testing existence and completeness. Why you're testing completeness also in doing stock take? Because they will report the inventory, put it in the inventory account, and reflecting in the financial statements. So the completeness is to test, they're saying all the inventory that we have is recorded. Got it, huh? All the inventory that we have and have the right and own is recorded or are recorded in the inventory account. Am I correct on saying that? That's their assertion. So you as an auditor will also base your audit objective on what is the assertion that they're reflecting. So to obtain an assurance that all the inventories recorded or supposed to be recorded in the inventory ledger had been recorded. Clear? Audit objective. So this phrase is really important. Huh? It's repeating. Okay? You can change this if you want. Okay? There are other ways to do this, but when I'm doing audit, this is the normal phrase that I use. Okay, to obtain an assurance. Okay. What else? Okay, how to test valuation? If they're using IFRS requirement on lower of cost or net realizable value, of course you have to test the valuation. Okay, you can do analysis. Okay. Fixed asset. What will be the key assertion that you want to test? Existence. Okay. What else? Can we also test rights and obligation? Yes. Especially if you're engaged in leasing, which means you are the lessee, you're the one renting or leasing the property. And if it is under the lease agreement, under IFRS 16, you are supposed to record it as part of your asset. If you are the one leasing the property, if it is under lease, you have to record it as part of your asset. Okay, of course, I will not discuss about the technicalities. It will be discussed in financial reporting. Can you also say valuation? As part of the things that you want to test? Yes, of course. Is it? You want to test depreciation?
Yes.
You say, yes, I'm willing because that's the easiest thing to do. Right? It's the easiest for it. Anyway, so clear? Based on that, design. Let's test some audit procedures here. Physical inspection. Okay? Everyone's favorite because it's the chance for you to go places. Okay? Right? I have a story, but later I'll talk about it. Okay, select a sample of recorded fixed asset from the fixed asset register and physically inspect them. Okay, why you're doing that? Because you're obtaining an assurance that the fixed asset that they recorded in fixed asset exists. Okay. All right. What else do we have? Accounts payable and accruals. Take note. One of the most important two important assertions here will be completeness and rights and obligation. Why completeness? People tend not to recognize that they have obligations. Okay, did you or have you experienced borrowing money from your friend, maybe 20k na, and then you forgot? Not intentionally, but you forgot that you have 20k na, okay, that you borrowed from your friend. Happened? I think Miss Pa is now recalling. I think I borrowed from Alu. Okay, now Alu will collect it later. Alright, so 20k na. Is it normal as a human being to forget? I'm not saying it's your fault, but it's a normal thing that sometimes when we borrow, we tend to forget, not intentionally. Clear, huh? But when we collect, or we need to collect, we always remember. Clear? Am I clear of saying that? So here, in obligation, completeness is one of the most important assertions because there might be tendency that the client either intentionally or unintentionally didn't record the payables. Clear? If they fail to record payables, it will reduce the liability and it will increase the net asset. The increased net asset is much better than reduced net asset. Okay, clear? Am I clear on what I'm trying to say? Another one is right and obligation. Are they obliged to pay? Okay, so those are important. Huh? Now, if you read this probably later, I already downloaded uploaded in Moodle. The way to read this is to determine which is the important assertion. Okay, so which means out of, let us say, 5 here, you might have 2. That is really important. Okay, the reason why I'm not really identifying it straightforward is because it depends on the situation. But there are normal assertion or key assertion that you really need to focus on. Okay. So I'm not saying, I'm not even highlighting this completeness and rights and obligations are important. So when you receive this document, it's up to you to determine which will be the key assertion. Okay. Use your logic and reasoning. Just like what I've said. Payables, sometimes you forgot. So company also may also forget that they have loans. So we have to check whether they recorded it. Okay, clear? Okay, others here are you can go through and read. Okay, it's already in Moodle. Okay, all right. So the key in the discussion today is focusing on assertion and audit procedure. Design audit procedure to test assertion. You will only have the chance if you had identified accounts. Okay, and I think in assignment I already mentioned what are the key assertion, or I only asked 2 accounts, and then identify 3 assertions, so something like that. I forgot to either 3 accounts, 2 assertion each, or 2 accounts, 3 assertion each. Anyway, you have the idea, okay, and then design audit procedure. Okay, clear? All right, so that's the end of my discussion today. Any question? Nothing. All right, so if you don't have question, thank you for attending the session. Okay, straight talk. Getting better and better on doing the discussion continuously. Okay, so next meeting we'll have a short discussion questions on some topics that we missed, or some discussion question that we missed. Okay, and hopefully starting from now I will post a discussion board link where you will post the name of your team and team members. Huh? So you start doing your grouping stuff because assignment will be due on week 10 or 11. 10. 11, week 11. The second assignment. Huh? That MS Teams. Okay, so I'll create a link. Please post the name of your team and team members there, huh? In Moodle. Then I'll create a group in Moodle. So when I grade your work, I already knew who will be part of the team. Okay. All right. Thank you for attending and see you next meeting. I think 4. I said 4. I forgot. Wait.